At an Airbnb in Inglewood at 1:30 in the morning, 7 uninvited guests are moving through the shadows at the birthday party of 20-year-old Brianna Steins, also known as Lady Takeoff from Eastside Mob Peru. They've been circling the party for hours, have picked out their targets, and are seconds away from putting up over 100 shots through the walls of the party. But what they didn't know is they already led detectives through a trail of bullets back to a compound in 11A East Coast Hood that served as a meeting point and a dispatch location when it was time to press play on their enemies. And that compound turned aggressive shooters into serial killers in the city of LA. Rap News Street Politics, the best hood channel on YouTube. Viewer discretion is advised. Some of the images displayed in this video may be sensitive to some viewers, but we about to bring you as close as possible to each event that took place on Sunday, January 23rd, 2022. This is Lady Takeoff's birthday party off North Park Avenue in the city of Inglewood. A lot of Bloods and Pyrus are in attendance. The Swans are said to be here. The Westside Pyrus are present. 1 Trey 5 Pyru is present. And of course, Eastside Mob Peru is also in attendance at a birthday party that didn't only attract Bloods and Pyrus on this night. Among those members, we got Lady Takeoff's sister, 26-year-old Marnisha Hamilton, also known as Boss Lady from Mob Peru. We have 21-year-old Jaden Griffin, also known as B-Flag from 1 Trey 5 Peru. We have 21-year-old Teron Whitaker, whose gang affiliation is unknown. And we have 21-year-old Kwame Mahan, also known as Hothead Brazy from Mob Peru. Now, throughout the night, everything is seemingly going according to plan. It's a nice setup inside of this back unit at an Airbnb, birthday balloons, treats, everything was laid out nice. And throughout the night, Ring Camera catches partygoers hanging out outside and enjoying each other's company. At around 10:35 p.m., we see Lady Takeoff outside with a few other female partygoers, and nothing seems to be wrong. But there's more to what meets the eye in these images. As time is going, 3 vehicles are seen passing by the party. A white Mercedes sedan, a green Dodge Charger, and a black Mercedes SUV are seemingly spinning this party, plotting on Lady Takeoff and everybody else in attendance. Now, as the night starts to wind down, a few people have left the party, and by 1:30 in the morning, about 15 to 20 people are inside the Airbnb kicking it. At 1:36 in the morning, 7 suspects are seen creeping down the driveway of this Airbnb with multiple firearms in hand. And a second Ring camera closer to the back unit catches 3 of the main individuals setting up in position. In the gray sweatsuit, we have 21-year-old Khalil Santos, also known as Infant Baller, or Lil Scrappy, from 6'9 East Coast Crip. In the blue sweatpants, black hoodie, we have 28-year-old Corey Irvin, also known as the General, or G-Man for short, from 11A East Coast Block Crip. And with the red shoes, we have 22-year-old Kendall Taylor, also known as A-Boy, also from 11A East Coast Block Crip. Now, Corey and Khalil hit the left of the building and start to peer into the windows, while Kendall Taylor hides behind planters, and he also takes a look inside. As Corey and Khalil come back towards the driveway, Kendall Taylor motions to them that he sees the target. Directly on the other side of this wall lies Brianna Steins and her sister Marnisha Hamilton. And after taking a couple steps back, shots begin to ring off from 2 rifles, 2 pistols, and the Uzi, ripping through the party. Now, Hothead Brazy is said to have been sitting down at this time when bullets started flying. He said he was hit and then jumped out the window to dodge the other bullets and hid in the yard until shots stopped firing. But the shots lasted for almost a minute, with the individual holding the Uzi having time to reload before continuing to fire. And as all the suspects ran away, they seemingly came back and fired more rounds from across the street into the Airbnb for good measure. And when it was all said and done, Brianna Steins, Marnisha Hamilton, Teron Whitaker, and Jaden Griffin all sustained gunshot wounds and did not leave this Airbnb with their lives this night. By 1:37 in the morning, police get a phone call of a shooting, and when they arrived on the scene, they noticed that it was a massacre. Hothead Brazy was hit, but still alive in front of the party, telling officers there were more people hit in the back, and they take him out the way. And as police begin to tape off the scene, they find 49 9mm cartridges, 26 7.62s, 25 .223 cartridges, along with 640 and 645 caliber shell casings left behind, totaling 112 bullets fired in total. And as they received the ring camera footage, they noticed the green Charger, the white Benz, and the black Mercedes SUV speeding away from the scene. But they hadn't glued together that this black Mercedes SUV is something they've been watching for a long time on 118th and Main Street. Now, this location at 11854 Main Street used to be an old smoke shop in the middle of 11A East Coast Hood. It's somewhat of a warehouse turned into a residential space where 51-year-old Marvin Lanier, also known as K-Head, from 11A East Coast Block Crip, is running his business out of. But this compound is also equipped with electric gates, various surveillance cameras, and all the tools necessary for East Coast to operate in secrecy while putting in work. Now, before police stumble on this compound, we have to retrace our steps before the quadruple murder at the birthday party. And this is what brings us to a full circle moment on November 17, 2021, 2 months before the birthday murders, back in the city of Inglewood. On this night, at the Quality Inn off Century Boulevard, police are patrolling. They enter the parking lot and they see a blue 2010 Mazda 3 backed into a parking space with 2 individuals that are unresponsive. Police say they decided to approach this vehicle to do somewhat of a wellness check to make sure these dudes are okay. You know, drugs these days take people out. So police use that as their motive for popping up on this car. And as they approach, they not only see 19-year-old Kevin Salter, who also goes by Infant June Boy from 6'9 East Coast, along with his cousin in the driver's seat, Jeremy Ransom, who also goes by June Boy from 6-Pack East Coast. But the handle of a black handgun catches their eye from the front windshield underneath Kevin Salter's leg. Police then decide to tap on the door handle and the door is unlocked. They immediately retrieve the firearm, which turns out to be a Smith & Wesson 40 cal, and they begin to detain Infant June Boy. Now, after pulling his cousin Jeremy out, they then find a Glock 19 and Jeremy is detained. Now, with June Boy already previously being convicted of a felony, he's not supposed to have this weapon. And with the Glock 19 coming back as stolen out of Vegas, both of these dudes go down instantaneously. And the blue Mazda is towed out of the Quality Inn. Now, the blue Mazda's registration is ran, and it ends up coming back to a young lady by the name of Holly Santos. Holly Santos is the sister of Infant Baller from 6'9 East Coast. Now, Khalil, Infant June Boy, and his cousin Jeremy are all tight-knit, seen in multiple photos together representing the 6-pack. And at this time, Khalil and the June Boys were suspects in a home invasion that it took place just prior to the June Boys going down for these guns at the Quality Inn. But with no real connection of Holly Santos to any crime or this vehicle being related to anything, they released the blue Mazda back to Holly Santos, and nothing is really standing out at this time. But in less than a month, Infant Baller and Infant June Boy would be seen in this same blue Mazda in front of 201 East 116th Street in the 11A East Coast blocks, at a crime scene that will blow this case wide open. Now, 11A East Coast is not a large hood, but it's an aggressive hood, surrounded by a lot of enemies. And with their hood overlapping enemies, there's a lot to get into in this section. To the south of them is Athens Park. Coexisting with them is South Los. And along with Athens Park, they're gonna be beefing with the Pirus in Compton. But at this time in late 2021, they seemingly started aggressively attacking South Los, which started 3 days after Infant June Boy goes down at the Quality Inn. At 105 West 116th Street, right by the underpass of the freeway, there's somewhat of a mechanic business there. And at 5:30 p.m., 3 members of South Los by the name of Danny Rodriguez, Temper, and Demon are said to be here working on a vehicle. And this is when East Coast strikes, firing 27 9mm rounds and 15 7.62s. They hit Danny Rodriguez, who was seen lying on the ground between 2 cars with a gunshot wound to his shoulder and his leg. They hit Temper, who was laying next to him with a gunshot wound to the left front shoulder. And they hit Demon in the head. And when police arrived on the scene, witnesses said they seen Demon pissing in his hands, trying to clean his wound out after still being conscious after a headshot. Now, all 3 of these dudes from South Los are surprisingly still alive. But when police got to the scene, they only locate 2 of the 3 victims. Demon is missing. He ran to a hotel with the gunshot wound in his head and met with a member named Lefty from South Los. He asked Lefty for help and seemingly wanted to get out of the vicinity of the shooting. This is when additional calls come in and say there's a man with a gunshot wound on 108th and Fig, bleeding from his head, and he's now incapacitated and unresponsive. Police arrive, and it's Demon from South Los. Now, the first two victims on 116th were uncooperative. They didn't tell police who shot at them, and when police got up with Lefty from South Los, he didn't do any telling either. But police had it in the back of their mind that 11A East Coast was responsible for this. And 2 weeks later, on December 6, 2021, they would get a clearer picture as to who exactly was attacking the members from South Los. Now, shortly before 7 p.m. on the 116th, this is a dead-end street. 11A is back here, and at this time of 2021, South Los is back here in somewhat of a homeless encampment. Sitting in the RV directly across from 201 East 116th Place, we have 34-year-old Jose Palmer, also known as Samer, from South Los, and 25-year-old Hector Cervantes, also known as Pollo, who was seen repping 101st and Freeman, which is Thepa Gang in the city of Inglewood. They're with their girlfriends, Daisy and Araceli. Samer has some meth in his pocket, and they're looking to wind down and kick it for the night. Now, minutes before this, an individual named Lucifer from South Los, who frequents this area, was seen at the RV. He's a young dude from South Los, 17 years old, and he was noticeably apprehensive. He was seemingly hiding inside the RV, waiting for a vehicle to leave. And shortly after he does so, Samer hears a noise outside of the RV, and it ends up being a Suzuki bike owned by Pollo being knocked over to the ground. Samer turns to Pollo and lets him know his bike is on the ground, and he goes outside to pick it up. As soon as Samer steps outside of that RV, an event similar to the one that occurred at the Airbnb in Inglewood occurred. Shots start ripping through the walls of the RV. When that happens, Samer yells to Pollo and says they're shooting, before being hit in the neck and being shot a total of 12 times, leaving him directly at the steps of the RV that he just came out of. Pollo, on the other hand, dives on top of Daisy, who went on to say she felt the bullets flying in front of her face. And as Pollo saved her life, he takes 6 shots, 4 of which being directly in his chest. And these are seemingly the first 2 homicide victims laid down by the aggressive shooters. Now, when police got on the scene, they're trying to tape everything off. They said there's a lot of stray cats on the scene, kicking all the shell casings and evidence around, but they end up coming up on 53 spent 9mm shell casings, along with 2 live bullets. Around the RV, numerous pieces of South Los graffiti, and directly south of it is a homeless tent. Now, in that tent lies Pollo's sister, along with other members of South Los. And this is where they get their first witness, making statements about what they seen when East Coast pressed play. She told police about Lucifer and how he was apprehensive at the RV. And she went on to state that after the shooting, she saw 2 vehicles speeding from the scene, a black Volkswagen Jetta and a black Mercedes-Benz SUV. But just east of the RV, she pointed out another vehicle that also has a known association to East Coast, the 2010 blue Mazda 3 that Infant June Boy went down in a month prior at Quality Inn. Now, when they seen the Mazda, the key thing that stuck out to them was that it had bullet holes in it, but the bullet holes did not match the trajectory of the ones that hit the RV. And when they took a closer look inside of it, they noticed a ski mask, a face mask, and blood was also present on the driver's side. And they went ahead and towed that blue Mazda off the scene. Now, Samer, who was pronounced dead on the scene, with the bullet still protruding from his neck, didn't stand a chance, being directly in the line of fire. But Pollo was transported to UCLA Harbor before being pronounced dead. And the next day, police decide to pull the registration on the blue Mazda, being that's the only piece that seemingly didn't fit off the crime scene. And it came back to none other than Holly Santos, the sister of infant baller from 6'9" East Coast. Now, DNA still had to be processed from the blood found in the Mazda, as well as DNA from the items inside the Mazda, along with fingerprints on the car. But police tried to get in contact with Holly Santos about giving her the car back. And of course, they want to talk and ask what her car was doing on 116th. When they finally got in contact with her, she said that she reported the car stolen, and communication with her seemingly went cold after multiple attempts of trying to meet. And on December 7, 2021, police are seemingly sitting on their hands, waiting for more leads to pop up. And one does. Exactly 24 hours after the murder of Pollo and Samer in the RV, police get a call of a shooting on El Segundo and Main Street in the Athens Park Bloods. Now, this was seemingly a busy day. When police arrived at the Arco gas station, they stumbled across multiple individuals hit with high-powered rifles, Some are still at the scene, others have departed and have now widened the scope of the investigation. But when they contacted the worker inside of the AMPM, she stated she heard several gunshots and a black female enter the store holding the right side of her abdomen, and she observed a large amount of blood leaking from that bullet wound. She stated that the young lady ran to the back of the store, entered the staff room, and then ran back outside the front entrance in an unknown direction. She also stated that she saw a black man run towards the store from the gunshots, and he seemingly jumped inside of an unknown vehicle and sped off the scene. But police also made contact with a Toyota Tundra. There was a gunshot victim sitting in that Tundra who said he was on the phone with his son after he heard several gunshots coming from behind him, and as he slumped down in his seat, his glass shattered and he was hit on the left side of his abdomen. Now, he was treated at the scene, but police needed to find those other victims that came out of a white Alfa Romeo SUV that was left on the scene unattended. So the first point of action, police decided to start calling the hospitals. And this is when they found two recent gunshot victims who had stated that they were shot on El Segundo in Maine. Imajane Howard, the female that ran inside the AMPM store, and Keandre Neal, the individual that jumped into the unknown vehicle and sped off the scene. Both of these individuals are said to be from Athens Park Bloods. Now, Imajane has sustained a gunshot wound to the leg, the same as Keandre. Both were still alive, and police immediately drove to UCLA Harbor to meet with Keandre Neal after he was evaluated and treated for his wounds. He said that he was in the car with his friends. Imajane was sitting in the front passenger seat, and he suddenly heard numerous gunshots. He immediately jumped out of the vehicle from the driver's side and dove underneath that pickup truck of the man talking to his son. The truck was parked next to the Alfa Romeo, and he said he began hiding underneath the pickup truck until he felt a tingling sensation and a heaviness in his right leg. He looked down and saw a massive amount of blood leaking, and when the shooting stopped, he crawled from underneath the pickup truck and hopped into one of his other friends' cars before leaving the scene. And that action is what got the individual sitting in that truck, an unaffiliated individual, also shot. And around those two vehicles, police find 36 .223 shells and 37 .762 shells riddled in the parking lot of the Arco gas station. And as they cut the tape on, they seen at approximately 7:15 p.m. two black males walk up to the Alfa Romeo from the south side of the parking lot, armed with rifles. One black male wearing a red hoodie and the other one wearing a white sweater began shooting several rounds before entering a small silver or gray type SUV and speeding off the scene westbound towards Main Street. Now, an individual from Westside Piru was also at the gas station, and he seemingly made it out without being touched. But earlier that day, it said that Athens Park had shot somebody from Carver Park. So initially, police started to look at the Carvers as the suspects for retaliation over here on El Segundo in Maine, not gluing together anything with the homicide that took place just 24 hours prior on the 116th, being that these were two different hoods. But from a bird's eye view, these were two hoods that were also beefing with 1180 East Coast. Now, nobody ended up losing their life at this Arco shooting, but that wouldn't be the case exactly 7 days later in Westside Piru Hood on North Salinas Avenue and 134th Street. Police at this point are waiting for something to fall in their lap. They got descriptions of vehicles, not really any descriptions for any suspects, and they're waiting for DNA. But the aggressive nature of these shooters also seemingly was their Achilles heel, because right before 6 p.m. on Tuesday evening, December 14, 2021, police get another call, this time at another gas station on Central and Alondra. They respond to see another black female suffering from a gunshot wound to her right hip. She's still alive, conscious, and as she begins to break down exactly what happened, another phone call arrives off of Salinas Avenue in Compton. And when police respond, they find 29-year-old Antonio Dotson, also known as Rosecrans Tone, from Westside Piru, suffering from at least 32 gunshot wounds sustained to his torso and his limbs. Laying next to him was his key fob and his cell phone, which had also been struck by gunfire, along with his Audi that also had multiple bullet holes in it. And with 32 gunshot wounds, Antonio Dotson is pronounced deceased at the scene at 5:57 p.m. on the night of December 14th. Now, the female victim at the gas station was able to escape with her life and was also able to recount the events that took place on Salinas. She said she was waiting in her driveway in front of this house and speaking with her tenant, which was Antonio. She said he was about to make a rent payment when he was leaned over in their car and they were having a conversation. And with her story being corroborated by surveillance footage, a black Mercedes SUV is traveling south on Salinas and suddenly stops just south of the driveway. Immediately, the front passenger gets out the car and starts sparking with a high-power rifle before another passenger gets out the car and he is also sparking with a high-power rifle. And the two shooters proceed to shoot Antonio Dodson and his landlord before jumping back into the black Benz and fleeing south on Salinas Avenue out of view. At this point, this is when the landlord drove off of Salinas and drove to the gas station off Central and Alondra. And left behind was Antonio Dodson, lying face down in the driveway, bleeding from his back and unconscious. And this murder would bring some instant karma back to 118th and Main Street. While police are still processing this scene on Salinas in the Westside Pyrus, approximately 3 hours later, at 8:22 p.m., they get another phone call. And this time, it's another shooting, but in the 1180 East Coast. Now, 2 phone calls initially came in, one from 118th and another from 116th, just steps away from where police found Pollo and Samer from South Los. Police find a gray Mazda on 116th with 23-year-old Deontay Wilkins in the back seat, suffering from multiple high-power rifle gunshot wounds and being pronounced dead. In the car with him is an individual named Devontae Brown and another individual named Terrence Adams, who also goes by Ratbone. Now, with this murder seemingly being retaliation for the murder of Tone just hours prior, police try to work fast, but something's missing. On 116th, where the phone call and the victims were at, no crime scene was found. No shell casings, no evidence of this shooting. And this is when police go back into the call log and find that the initial shooting report came from 118th and Main, and they make their way over there. And when they get there, this is the crime scene where Deontay Wilkins lost his life. But they also stumble on a Grand Theft Auto style compound at 11854 Main Street and locate multiple cameras in the field of view of the shooting of Deontay Wilkins. Now, police find just shy of 50 shell casings in the alley behind 11854 Main Street, and they immediately press for a search warrant of the surveillance camera that was just above those shell casings. Now, that search warrant also encompassed the surveillance camera on the other side of the black automatic gate due to there being potential evidence on that side of the gate. And when police got that camera footage, they began to piece together the makings of serial killers in South Central. Now, these tapes, again, are in possession of Marvin Lanier, K-Head, who's said to have the keys to 1180 East Coast, meaning that he was running a program. And police immediately turn the clock to 8:22 p.m. And on that tape, they see 2 things. They see a gray Mazda, Terrence Adams get into the driver's seat, Deontay Wilkins get into the back passenger, along with Devontae. But next to that vehicle, they see a black Mercedes SUV. And these 2 vehicles are in the courtyard, just on the other side of the gate. And video surveillance depicts the Mazda getting ready to take off before somebody runs away from it. And when it seems like Deontay Wilkins heard something from the alley, shots started ringing off, ripping through the Mazda, breaking the glass. And as the Mazda springs forward, the shooters step inside the compound and begin to fire more rounds into it, taking the life of Deontay Wilkins. Now that they've pieced together the crime scene and exactly what happened to Devontae, the next thing they start to put their focus on is that black Mercedes-Benz SUV, who up to this point, on December 15, 2021, has been at 2 different murder scenes involved in 3 homicides total. So detectives decide to rewind the surveillance video back to December 6th, the same day Pollo and Samer were killed on 116th. And at 7:04 p.m., 4 minutes after they were killed, detectives get a treat and stumble upon the black Mercedes SUV and the black Volkswagen Jetta, both described by Pollo's sister, turning into the compound on 118th and Main Street. Now, as the video keeps rolling, they watch Khalil Santos, Infant Baller, Corey Irvin, The General, Terrence Adams, Ratbone, and 19-year-old Kevin Infant Juneboy Salter exit those 2 vehicles. And they watch them go inside the compound straight to Marvin Lanier. But in hand, they have multiple weapons, rifles and pistols, on surveillance camera. They've taken their masks off, and they're seen laughing and joking and reenacting the murders of Pollo and Samer, showing how they performed to Marvin Lanier. Now, detectives caught a chance encounter, something that stood out to them. Marvin Lanier approaches Infant Baller, and he seemingly starts to inspect his neck, his hoodie, and his head area. He pulls out a flashlight, and him and Terrence are having an exchange with Khalil. while Corey, Kendall, and Kevin are seemingly doing their own thing, getting their shit straight. Now, this exchange between Marvin and Khalil turned out to be more important than one could imagine just based off watching the video. Remember, Khalil's sister's vehicle was found at the murder just minutes before this interaction. And in that vehicle, there was bloodstains along with other articles of clothing. And when detectives pulled Khalil's phone number, they noticed a phone call that Khalil had placed to an inmate sitting in LA County named Christian Holmes, December 8th, 2 days after the homicide. Now, as we all know, the phone calls from the jail are recorded. And 3 minutes and 40 seconds into that phone call, Khalil Santos states that he got skinned. He said on the dead homies, he was skinned in the ear and he got 4 holes in his sweater and that he was hit 1 time. Holmes asked him where he was hit at. Khalil replies his ear, and he replies on 11/8 he was in his car. And with this, they take this back to Pollo's sister, who again was on the scene in the tent under the RV, and she then extends her statement and says immediately after the shooting, an individual named Shrek from South Los had approached her out of breath with a pistol. He told her that he returned fire on these dudes from East Coast when he saw them shooting up the RV. And this whole interaction from the surveillance camera and the phone call has put everything into perspective as to how blood was found in that blue Mazda. Khalil Santos ends up being skinned, which also proves why the trajectory of bullets on the blue Mazda did not match that of those found on the RV. But back at the compound on camera, they now watch K-Head get to work. They see him changing the license plates on the black Mercedes SUV with the help of Terrence Adams. And when they put the originals back on and ran the registration, those license plates came back to an individual that was staying inside of Corey Irvin's address, seemingly linking him to that Mercedes. Now, police also noted that Kendall Taylor, aka 8-Boy, and Corey Irvin have received multiple citations in that black Mercedes-Benz in times past. And this is when police start to now figure out what's up with that black Jetta. Now, as more surveillance videos start to trickle in, they've already caught the black Jetta at the compound, pulling in right after the Mercedes. But surveillance around the neighborhood after the shooting on 116th captured the Jetta following closely behind the Mercedes on the path of travel away from the murder and to the compound. The plates on a black Jetta ends up coming back to a 2014 Volkswagen registered in the name of Kendall Taylor's mom. This is 8-Boy's mom's car used on the murder of Pollo and Samer. Now, December 20th, 2014, 5 days after they stumbled on this information, they're processing the registrations, and at this same time, in the city of Anaheim, this black 2014 Jetta is parked in the red in front of a fire hydrant, and there's also multiple outstanding tickets on it. The Volkswagen is towed and placed into custody. It had 5 parking tickets in the last 2 months, and when detectives in LA realize Anaheim PD already has it in their possession, they go ahead and touch it and find Kendall Taylor's AAA card along with his bail paperwork in the center console. And the door is quickly starting to close on East Coast. Now, along with Infant June Boy being caught at one time in the Mazda, his fingerprints were also pulled from the Mazda when they finally came back off of the scene where Pollo and Samer were murdered. And he's seen holding the pistol in his hand, getting back to the compound. And as we knew, Khalil Santos' DNA was found from the blood splatter of him being skinned in the ear while being in the Mazda on December 6th as well. Now, when it came to the homicide of Antonio Dodson, a new player got introduced from 1180 East Coast, Samaj Brown. When detectives flicked the camera back to a situation that brought them to the compound in the first place, they cut it on to 4 p.m. right before East Coast slid to the west side Pirus. They saw Khalil Santos and Samaj Brown grab some assault rifles before leaving the compound in the black Mercedes. And based on where Samaj Brown was sitting, they said that he was one of the individuals that jumped out and started firing at Rosecrans Tone. The camera also seen them come back in the Benz right after the murder and watched G-Man, Infant Baller, and Samaj Brown exit the vehicle. And of course, Khalil Santos and Samaj still had that heavy artillery in hand. This is when they start to peel off some of their clothes and hand it to Marvin, where he places the clothes in the barbecue pit and burns them. And a similar situation played out when they rolled the clock back to the shootings that happened at the Arco of Mumu and Keandre Neal. But what glued them together fully is that the car that was used at the Arco shooting ended up being an Enterprise rental, coming back to none other than Terrence Adams, aka Ratbone. Before that shooting, That same gray Mazda that Deontay Wilkins ended up being killed in was seen on the tape, and it shows K-Head changing the license plates on it. And right after that, Infant June Boy, Infant Baller, Ratbone, and G-Man slide to the Arco, which is less than a mile away from the compound. And this time, police say Infant Baller, Infant June Boy, and Ratbone are the ones that got out the car and start sparking at Moo Moo and Keandre before going back to the compound with everything seen on tape. Now, the murder of Deontay Wilkins was seemingly the final act by these individuals before the birthday party of Breonna Stines came into play. The same day detectives got the footage from 118th and Main, they say that a member from East Coast has shot 32-year-old Charleston Johnson from Denver Lane on Vermont right off the 105 ramp. And 3 days after that, they say the Westside Pyrus has shot and killed 25-year-old Cordell Bell off 120th and Willowbrook, who's from Mona Park. So they're trying to piece together who's who and what's what. But these dudes from 11-8 seemingly are staying low until that night on January 23rd off Park Avenue in Inglewood at the Airbnb. Now that they have Corey Irvin linked to the black Mercedes SUV, this is now gluing together who's in that black SUV that was on surveillance camera circling the birthday party of Lady Takeoff. They also ended up finding a plate that's associated with the green Charger that was also circling the party. Now, the plate didn't come back to anybody in Khalil's residence like that blue Mazda did, but Khalil Santos had also been stopped and received a citation in that same green Charger prior to the quadruple murder in the Airbnb. Now, with that being a high-profile case, January 26, 2022, the FBI steps in, along with 5 other agencies with their sites on the East Coast. They also say that they got a text message from a confidential informant stating that 11-8 East Coast was behind the quadruple murder of Breonna Stines, her sister, and the other partygoers. And when the FBI get to the table, they said they were already working on the phone numbers of Corey Irvin, Kendall Taylor, Khalil Santos, and Terrence Adams. When cellular analysis came back, they said Corey Irvin and Kendall Taylor's phone pinged within 100 meters of the Park Avenue address between 12:59 a.m. and 1:34 a.m. right when the murders were taking place. They said Khalil Santos' phone also pinged in that location. And when Terrence Adams was shot with Deontay Wilkins all the way back on December 14th, 2021, he had provided his phone number to detectives and they used it against him, triangulating his positions. And with everybody being glued, just 2 weeks shy of the quadruple murders in Inglewood, February 2nd, 2022, 6 individuals go down. The first spot, they hit 118th and Main. Marvin Lanier is at the compound and they take it down. They find a .223 rifle, a safe with bullets in it, face masks and ski masks, along with clothing seen at one of the murder scenes. Next, Terrence Adams, who coincidentally stayed on Bullis, but just south of Rosecrans in the Looters Parks, across from Mob Piru. When they hit his house, they find numerous articles of clothing matching the murder scenes, along with a ski mask, and they find Deontay Wilkins' obituary with Corey Irvin and Samaj Brown as pallbearers. They also find a rifle with a scope and rounds in Ratbone's crib. Next, they hit Kendall Taylor's spot, and they came up on a whole lot. They found the clothes Corey Irvin was wearing, the blue sweatpants and black Nike jacket. They found a plate that was used as a swap on the black Mercedes SUV. They find his bail paperwork, the ones that matched the paperwork found in the black Jetta. They found multiple magazines and live rounds in his house as well. Khalil Santos, infant baller, goes down, and he seemingly is sitting on all the weapons. They found multiple rifles and handguns, drums, and they found a gray sweatsuit he was wearing on the night of the quadruple murders in Inglewood. And then it was time for infant June boy, Kevin Salter. They staked his house out on 126th. They found an individual that came out of the house that matched his description, jumping to an Uber. They couldn't definitively say if it was him, so they followed the Uber to downtown LA. This individual then jumps out on Flower Street in front of the Pegasus Apartments, where he's identified as 19-year-old Kevin Salter, also known as Infant June Boy. And when they try to stop him, he does the dash. He starts trying to do his shit and throws a pistol underneath the vehicle. That pistol comes back as a .40 cal before he's tackled to the ground and hits his head on a pole and is taken to the hospital. And after the hospital is where we found him sitting in that room with detectives, where he said he had a learning disability and he don't know what they're talking about. Detectives tried to grill him, and he seemingly dodged all questions, even ones pertaining to some gangbang, and he got himself up out of that room. But when they took Terrence Adams, also known as Ratbone, down, he got in the interview room and did make a few statements, and he gave an account as to why his fingerprints were on the blue Mazda that was parked on 116th after the murder of Samer and Pollo, and why he was identified getting out of the Mercedes SUV 4 minutes after the murder. He identified himself at the crime scene, and he stated that Khalil Santos had gave him a call that day. He said that Khalil stated that he got into it with members of South Los, and that he was on 116th in the blue Mazda, and that he got grazed in the ear. Terrence Adams said that he then slid on 116th in the Mercedes SUV solely to pick up Khalil Santos. He said Khalil jumped in the car and they slid off 116th, but Khalil was with somebody who Terrence couldn't identify. He said that as they were sliding off, another car had pulled up and that unidentified individual had somewhat rendezvoused with the individuals in that other car. And as they were driving off, they began to hear gunshots go off on 116th before going to the compound. He also identified Marvin Lanier as being the individual inside the compound that they were talking to, and without realizing it, glued himself to the murder scene of Pollo and Samer. Now, Samaj Brown ended up going down 5 days after these dudes, February 7, 2022, initially for a parole violation, before being upgraded for being involved in the murder of Tone from Westside Piru. Now, when all these guns were seized on these takedowns, one gun in particular has stood out. It was a 40 cal pistol registered to an individual named Augustin Cerezo. And in a twist and turn of events, on January 18, 2022, before the murders in Inglewood, Augustin, who stayed in the Hoovers off 88th and Hoover, was found dead, shot and burned, and located by a transient in a grassy area behind residential buildings in the city of LA. Now, police have not linked that murder to this situation, but that was a part of their findings when weapons were located on these suspects. But one thing police did take note of was that shell casings from a 9mm had matched those used in an assault with a deadly weapon, where a lady was shot at Manchester Park on 88th and Hoover, just steps away from where Augustin lived. Back on June 11, 2021, 8 9mm cases were found and were a match for the one used to kill Pollo and Samer, and another shooting that went on in Vegas in 2015. And this ended the whirlwind, where police got a front row seat due to compound footage of aggressive shooters turned into serial killers. Now, when everything hit the fan, trials were had. Khalil Santos, aka Infant Baller, was found guilty of 7 murders, 6 attempts, multiple conspiracy charges, and assault with a machine gun, and he was sentenced to life without parole with more than 100 years on a sentence. Corey Irvin, the General, aka G-Man, met a similar fate, found guilty of 7 murders, 6 attempts, multiple conspiracy charges, and assault with a machine gun, life without parole, over 200 years. Kendall Taylor, acquitted of 4 murders and 4 attempts, but was convicted of 2 murders and has been sentenced to 30 years of life in state prison. Marvin Lanier, who police allege had dominion over this group, provided weapons, provided a safe house, and was the G-homie overseeing the murders. He was acquitted of the killings of Pollo and Samer, but convicted of 1 homicide linked to Antonio Dotson and 2 attempts and multiple conspiracy and gun charges, sentenced to 25 to life. Samaj Brown, acquitted of an attempt, but found guilty of the first-degree murder of Antonio Dotson from Westside Piru, as well as 1 conspiracy charge. He received life without parole. Now, for Kevin Salter and Terrence Adams, jurors were deadlocked in their connection with the murder of Pollo and Samer from South Los, but Infant Juneboy was found guilty of 2 conspiracies and 2 attempts, but he has a retrial May of 2026. The same with Terrence Adams, May of 2026. And this is how it played out, with the East Coast Crips being aggressive with their enemies, aggressive with the gunplay, leading their enemies and the police back to their compound and going crazy in the city. Y'all make sure y'all stay locked in for the next one. This the best hood channel on YouTube, Rap News Street Politics. We out.